Good evening, I'm Jason Vio. Katerina is away tonight. This is CBC Windsor News Live at 6. Thank you so much for watching. Here's what's making news tonight. Construction still mostly stopped at the battery plant in Windsor. We'll bring you the latest political movements coming up. Plus, the first bi-national electric vehicle corridor announced within the last hour. We'll take you live to Detroit to go over those details. And Essex Town Council wants the local hospital system examined after recent situations where no ambulances were available to respond to 911 calls. Pressure is mounting to save the electric vehicle battery plant right here in Windsor. Most of the construction has paused at the multi-billion-dollar facility as federal and provincial politicians battle it out over subsidies. TJ Deere has more.
The day started in South Korea, with Canada's Minister of Industry asking for more from Ontario.
What we are at a crossroad now is that we need our friends and partners in Ontario to pay their fair share, as they have always done in every transaction we have done. And that's what we're facing today.
Windsor-Tecumseh MPP Andrew Dowie responded by doubling down on what the Premier said yesterday, that this part of the deal rests on the federal government.
Ontario simply does not have the capacity or the capability to respond to the fiscal power of the U.S. federal government.
And that's concerning to me, that what the provincial government, what Doug Ford and other local representatives are saying is, it's not our responsibility, or we've done our part, and not be open to going back to have conversations and be part of the solution.
Stellantis and LG Energy Solutions have paused construction on part of the EV battery plant. 2 buildings are under construction here, one to manufacture the lithium-ion battery cells, and another to create the modules that will house the cells, and it's that modular facility that has stopped being built. Unifor Local 444 President Dave Cassidy says there's about 300 jobs attached to that part of the battery plant. A Stellantis spokesperson declined to comment on whether the cell portion of the facility is at risk as the company explores contingency plans. A former finance minister under former Premier Dalton McGuinty said the clock is ticking for Queen's Park and Ottawa.
Canada has a decision to make. Canada and Ontario, I should add. Do we want to be part of this industry anymore? Or do we want these jobs and this investment to go? Apparently, Indianapolis is one possibility.
Ottawa agreed to provide $500 million in funds to the battery plant in Windsor, which Ford said they matched. Earlier this year, German automaker Volkswagen decided to build their EV battery factory in St. Thomas. Ottawa agreed on a deal that includes up to $13 billion in subsidies. That came after the Biden administration passed the Inflation Reduction Act, which is what brought Stellantis and LG back to the bargaining table with Ottawa.
They said, would you sit down with us, because the dynamic of supply chain in North America have changed. In good faith, we said, sure, we'll sit down with you because, it's a strategic investment in the future of the auto sector.
Despite the sudden change of plans by Stellantis, Champagne is still confident a deal can be done. That's what people in Windsor want to see next, especially after the Volkswagen deal.
They've been here for over 100 years, I think, and I don't feel that why should a German company come in and take over that kind of field.
It's very disappointing, considering, that we have a lot of people that are looking for employment.
CBC News is awaiting further comment from Stellantis. TJ Deere, CBC News, Windsor.
And CBC News has obtained a letter from the CEOs of Stellantis and LG sent to the Prime Minister last month, and it was first reported by the Toronto Star. Now, in that letter, they wrote that they appreciated the, quote, swift assurances that the government gave them about the Inflation Reduction Act. The CEOs wrote that the Liberal government has given the firms written confirmation to match the production incentives under the IRA. They go on to say that the delay in signing the deal is bringing significant risk to the project. And the Prime Minister is in South Korea today meeting with that country's president and business leaders. Ashley Burke is among the journalists traveling with the Prime Minister, and she has this report from Seoul.
The Prime Minister touched down in Seoul to position Canada as a place to invest in green tech. But ahead of those talks with Korean business leaders, controversy back home.
It seems that every time I'm in Asia, there's something going on back home.
Auto giant Stellantis and partner Korean-based LG Solutions threatening to scrap its EV battery plant in Windsor, Ontario, if they don't get what they want, U.S.-style subsidies. Innovation Minister François-Philippe Champagne is in Seoul and says he plans to find LG CEO at a state dinner to talk.
I know his face, I know who he is, so we just need to find him in the room, but trust me, Well, I mean, listen, you know me, I'm not very shy. So if he's in the room, I'll go talk to him.
It's all unfolding as South Korea tries to be less reliant on Russia for sources of energy, and along with Canada and other G7 countries, resist China's economic coercion.
We've stated that we would be fighting against any form of economic coercion coming from China in our Indo-Pacific strategy.
That coercion after Canada carried out a U.S. warrant in 2018 arresting Huawei's CFO Meng Wanzhou. Along with detaining 2 Canadians, China revoked licenses for 2 major Canadian canola exports and targeted other Canadian imports too.
We have been the victim to some extent with the politically generated restrictions on canola, on pork, and even still perhaps on beef. The problem is China very often, they won't own up to it.
The U.S. is now calling for G7 countries to come up with a coordinated plan to combat that threat from the Chinese government together, and that's expected to be a key theme at the G7 in Japan later this week. Ashley Burke, CBC News, Seoul.
And across the border this afternoon, a new partnership was announced between Canada and the United States to create an electric vehicle corridor. But as we know, it comes at a time when there's uncertainty around the battery plant in Windsor, in part because of the Inflation Reduction Act in the U.S. CBC's Jennifer LaGrassa was at that announcement, and she joins us live now from Detroit. Jen, we'll get to the announcement in a minute, but first, Canada's Transport Minister was there today. What did he have to say about what's happening here with Stellantis?
So he says he feels confident that the plant is going to move forward as planned. He said there's ongoing discussions right now between the province, the federal government, and Stellantis. And he says that because these negotiations are ongoing, he really couldn't say more. I asked what commitments the federal government hasn't delivered on. That's according to Stellantis within this deal. And again, Alghabra said, because those negotiations are ongoing, he really couldn't say what those were. I also asked if there was any sort of risk that this plant will leave Windsor, leave Canada, and actually come right here to the United States. And again, Alghabra just said, he's confident that things are going to move forward as expected.
Okay, Jen, now let's take it to why you're in Detroit today. The cross-border EV partnership, what is that all about?
Yeah, so Canada and the U.S. have said that they are joining together to create a binational electric vehicle corridor. And so essentially what this is it's going to go from Kalamazoo, Michigan, all the way to Quebec City in Quebec. And along this stretch, about every 80 kilometers or so, there's going to be a DC fast charger. And that's for those electric vehicles. Both countries are going to be funding the chargers within their own borders. And they couldn't give a total on how much that will cost. Right now, Quebec and Ontario actually lead EV sales in Canada. But experts have really said that, we don't have the infrastructure to support that growing demand here in Ontario. Right now, the city of Windsor actually has 11 charging stations, and there's about 22 chargers in total. That's not including those that are on private lands and businesses. But none of the city-owned chargers are actually fast chargers. So the ones we currently have, they will basically, for every hour that you charge it, you'll get about 30 kilometers, whereas a DC fast charger will bring that electric vehicle from 0 to 80% within 30 to 45 minutes. I actually spoke with an EV owner who's in Windsor today about some of this, and he said that, his EV is about 12 years old, so it can't really use the fast chargers, but this is going to be good for future users.
We have to make it more convenient, like being able to come in, and the vehicles are being more and more capable of charging at a faster and faster rate to be actually almost at the level where you're pulling into a gas station today and filling up your tank. In order to have an uptick in having people go electric, this is a 100% step in the right position, in the right direction for sure.
Officials say that the announcement today is really strengthening that relationship between the U.S. and Canada, allowing them to work together for more EV jobs, manufacturing, and the supply chain. Jason.
All right, thanks so much, Jen. CBC's Jennifer LaGrassa reporting live in Detroit tonight. Back here in our region, Essex Council is urging the province to address gaps in the healthcare system, and the push is spurred by the amount of time Windsor Essex has spent in a code black situation. That's when there isn't an ambulance available to respond to a 911 call.
But it's a multifaceted problem, and we need to let the province know that this is not going away, that when we call an ambulance, somebody comes. I did have somebody reach out to me from Hidden Hidden Creek in McGregor, one of their family members got in trouble because there wasn't an ambulance. So, and it could be one of our family members.
Now, council will send a letter to the province and other councils. Bondi highlighted that the area is spending more time in Code Black, and the chief of Essex Windsor EMS says they've thrown a lot at this problem, adding that new paramedics are in training. Well, there could be chaos at airports this week, just in time for the long weekend. WestJet and Swoop pilots are threatening to go on strike, and it could happen as early as Friday. CBC business reporter Scott Peterson has those details.
They've served a 72-hour strike notice, about 1,800 pilots late last night, saying this puts them in a position of strike on Friday, which means that WestJet would be effectively grounded. The pilots union say that the wages, benefits, flexible shifts are all the main problems here and issues, and they've been trying to negotiate their contract all the way since last September. The pilots union tweet this morning saying after 9 months of negotiating, management still fails to understand today's labor market conditions, leading to a mass exodus of our pilots in search of better work opportunities, saying that about 39 pilots have left the position in the last few months, and that WestJet used to be a destination for a lot of new pilots as a place to work, saying that that no longer applies as far as the corporate culture goes.
The union, which is an American-based union, is looking to create a precedent for Canadian pilots to kind of create a North American standard for wages for pilots. Traditionally, that has not been the case.
On the other side of the equation, WestJet management, with the WestJet CEO saying that we regret the union has served a strike notice. Our offer would have made our valued WestJet pilots by far the best paid in Canada. As the union maintains unreasonable expectations, we see no alternative than to lock them out as of Friday. And WestJet continues saying that if there's anybody displaced by this, they will be refunded. They'll get their money back.
I think WestJet's got responsibility to basically communicate with their passengers that have travel booked as of Friday. They've made the commitment to get in touch with people. You either get an email or you get a text message. The
Minister of Labour said in a tweet this morning, we've received notices from WestJet of an intention to lock out pilots, of an intention to strike at 3 a.m. Mountain Friday time if a deal isn't reached. Federal mediators are focused on the bargaining table. That's where the best deals for employees and workers are made. So there's a lot of pressure on the government to facilitate the talking between the two without legislating something from the government level. Scott Peterson, CBC News, Toronto.
The federal government has introduced proposed changes to reform Canada's bail system. The Liberals say the bill will crack down on repeat violent offenders and offences involving firearms and other dangerous weapons. Now, the changes come after ongoing calls for tougher laws from the province's police and opposition parties.
Crucially, these proposed reforms signal that repeat violent offenders who pose a risk to community safety should not be released while awaiting trial.
The proposed reforms would create a reverse onus system for some offences, which would require individuals to prove in court why they should be released on bail before trial. The changes will also include cases where alleged crimes involve intimate partner violence. Shifting winds are posing a challenge today in the fight against wildfires in Alberta. More communities have been ordered to leave. Residents in the town of Valley View, northwest of Edmonton, are among the latest to be issued mandatory evacuation orders. There are nearly 90 wildfires and more than 24 are burning out of control. About 20,000 people are now out of their homes. 36 communities are under threat from flames, and 300 members of the Canadian Armed Forces are supporting about 1,500 firefighters on the ground. Air quality advisories from wildfire smoke cover large parts of that province. Still to come here on CBC Windsor News Live at 6. Sunny days on the way, but a bit cooler than we've been seeing. But experts also saying smoke from those Alberta wildfires could create hazy conditions in this region. Colette Kennedy has all of your weather details coming up next. It turns out even bees like junk food, and maybe as much as humans. And now biologists are asking us not to leave dandelions on your lawn because it's wasted nutrition that bees should not be eating. Laura Meter has that story.
Of course, their leaves are quite indented like that.
Kate McQuarrie says the best use for dandelions might be for humans, harvesting the leaves for salads or cooking. But when it comes to the value of the pollen, she says these flowers are like junk food for bees.
If you're leaving them for the bees, you're not really helping, and in fact, maybe doing more harm than good.
She says they're not as nutritious as other native wildflowers and hopes people rethink no mow May and leaving lots of dandelions.
So no mow May started in Europe, and dandelions are native there. And I really think the message was intended to be let native wildflowers grow, and that's a fantastic message. But in North America, it's kind of been twisted to let dandelions grow, and that's not really what we'd like to encourage.
This time of year, plants like willows and alders are better for bees. McQuarrie says people should do what they can to encourage native shrubs and trees and just let even a little part of their lawn go wild. As for people, McQuarrie says dandelion leaves are high in vitamins and iron, even better than kale or spinach. She says the younger leaves are less bitter and they taste better before the plant blooms.
I also think a lot of people think they don't like them because they may have just tried them raw from older plants, and they really are bitter and not very good that way. But younger leaves or cooked older leaves, that's where you want to go. I kind of like to cook them with bacon because everything's better with bacon.
She hopes people will leave a few if they want to eat them, but don't leave lawns filled with them. Because remember that junk food analogy? Bees can't resist them.
If there's lots of dandelions around, they'll pick those rather than the healthier pollen that's better for them. Kind of like us, right? We'll go to the junk food or dip into the bag of chips before eating the celery sometimes, even though it's better for us.
She hopes to see fewer dandelions on lawns and maybe more in kitchens, and that people will start looking at the idea of no mow May differently. Laura Meter, CBC News, Hazel Grove.
And Colette Kennedy joins us live now for a look at weather. And Colette, I have to say, no mow May. This is the first time hearing of it, admittedly, but it's an interesting concept.
Yeah, it is. And it's something that I've had to actually educate myself on because in previous years, like a couple of years ago, I would be upset with my husband if he'd mow the lawn because of no mow May. And then I've sort of learned and understand more what it's like here in North America and exactly why, what we see in that report. Maybe it's a good idea. Also, it just looks so nice when you have dandelions and then you mow the lawn and then it looks like you have a beautiful lawn. Till they all come on back again. What you may need to do for your lawn, though, is going to be the watering. We're having a look at what a monthly average is here for the month of May, and this is taking a 30-year average. And wait, aren't you coming? Isn't it? Nope. It's done. That's where we're at. We're, basically midway through this month, and I'm expecting this to rise. But of course, we know we haven't had a lot of rain. It was more sort of last month and previously. And so that's where we stand at the moment. Now, it's not just rain we might need to be thinking about tonight, thinking about frost as well. In terms of there is that risk. The advisories aren't in our area, but it's something to know of with this cold front that's passed through. So you can see the change. Look at how the temperatures, it's starting to come down to 11 and still 25 in Windsor. That will be changing too. So the winds are still westerly, getting a little bit, these are the sustained, but gusty at times, and they're going to change more to the north-northwest, and when they do, that temperature will be falling off. Now those winds likely to be helpful when it comes back to that frost because kind of keeping the atmosphere mixing so that maybe it won't be as widespread in parts of southern Ontario. But tomorrow night we may need to be a little more careful because some of the advisories could expand. Clearing skies as that front goes through, including clearing some of the smoke out of the upper atmosphere that were in our skies from the fires in Western Canada. So we'll clear that out. And there are the frost advisories, of course, not in southwestern Ontario. I do want to make that clear. And we should be okay because of that breeze, but just something to really watch for. Next couple of days, another ridge of high pressure is building in. So it may be cooler, but we get sunny conditions, clear skies at night, sunny conditions again. This is not just Wednesday, into Thursday as well. And then as we're approaching the weekend, we do have another system coming our way. It will bring some showers to the area. It shouldn't wreck all weekend plans by any stretch, as it will be kind of short-lived. There you are tonight with a look at some of those overnight readings. The cooler air tomorrow, almost 10 degrees cooler than today, and then 19, and then we get back to it.
There we go. I'm liking that 25. Thanks so much, Colette.
You're welcome.
Still to come, a sensational seal making a rare sight. You won't want to miss that story coming up right after the break. A new report from Ontario's Auditor General says our environment has seen some improvements over the last few decades, but air and water pollution, along with the loss of wetlands and forests, remain a concern. As Talia Ricci reports, there's also a push for government to make reports like these mandatory.
The report provides a snapshot of the state of the environment in our province. It's divided into the following categories: air, water, land and waste, climate, and nature and wildlife.
We believe the people of Ontario would benefit from a comprehensive report with easily understandable information.
The report found that Ontario's air and Great Lakes water quality have improved in many ways over the past several decades. However, there are exceptions for some contaminant trends, as well as some hotspot areas with elevated levels of air pollution.
In terms of waste management, Ontario's current landfill capacity is estimated to be capable of accepting at most only 10 to 13 more years of waste.
According to the report, a warming climate has raised Ontario's surface air temperature and increased the number of weather-related disasters. Wetlands and forests continue to be lost, and more native species continue to be classified as at risk.
The average number of hectares deforested each year is almost quadruple the area replanted. While the province does not collect comprehensive long-term data on wild pollinators, such as butterflies, wasps, and bumblebees, evidence shows that some species have declined dramatically.
The Auditor General says this report is a first of its kind in Ontario, but not in Canada. Saskatchewan, the Northwest Territories, and the Yukon are required by law to release State of the Environment reports every few years. So are many countries in Europe. Ontario, she says, should be doing the same.
We do see this kind of reporting done in other parts of the world. It's about time now. I think people are more interested in the environment. And so, a focus is to say, here's an example of what can be done with the information that's currently obtained.
Today, the Minister of the Environment would not say he had any concerns about what was presented in the report.
What concerns me is how do we remain a competitive climate in which we take meaningful action on the environment and attract jobs, and Premier Ford's doing just that.
Every Ontarian knows that the Greenbelt is not only at risk, it's being attacked by this government.
Environmental Defence agrees reports like this should be made mandatory by law because it also holds the government and corporations accountable.
You can't manage what you don't measure. And we have a bad history in this province of not measuring environmental indicators very well, in particular in the last number of years. And that makes it very difficult for decision makers like the government to institute new policies or to change directions for policies that aren't working.
Talia Ricci, CBC News, Toronto.
And a rare and endangered seal is causing a sensation on a beach in Israel. The Mediterranean monk seal is shedding her winter coat, something the animals usually do on cooler beaches in Greece or Turkey. Now, this unusual sighting is delighting locals who are keeping a close watch at a distance. Biologists believe there are only about 500 of these seals, making them among the rarest marine mammal in the world. Well, that's it for us here at CBC Windsor News. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget, for news anytime, head to our website, cbc.ca/Windsor. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great night.